Why do you look at her like that?
Ruth's voice cut through the kitchen steam, low and steady, like the rumble of thunder over the ridge. The air hung heavy with the scent of simmering beans and fresh cornbread, the old wooden counters scarred from years of family meals. My hands froze on the dish towel, the rough cotton biting into my palms. In this town, eyes missed nothing. Neighbors' glances across the fence, whispers at the feed store. One wrong look could unravel everything. The wedding, the ranch life I'd stepped into, the fragile peace I'd built. Jack's family expected a perfect bride, straight as the fence lines. I swallowed, forcing my voice even. I don't know what you mean, but the lie tasted like dust. I didn't come to Willow Creek looking for roots. I came because Jack's proposal felt like the only steady thing left after the city chewed me up. We'd met at a county fair 2 states over, him in his worn boots and me nursing a bruised heart from a woman who'd vanished without a word. He talked about the ranch like it was salvation. Wide skies, hard work, a place where folks stuck together. So I packed my bags and drove the long haul west, the highway blurring into dust devils until the sign for Willow Creek appeared. Population 1,200, give or take the ghosts. The ranch sprawled at the edge of town, a patchwork of corrals and hay barns under endless blue. Jack's folks greeted me at the gate, his ma with a hug that smelled of lavender soap and his pa nodding from the porch, pipe smoke curling lazy. But it was the house that settled into my bones first. The creak of floorboards underfoot, the way sunlight slanted through lace curtains onto the scarred oak table. Jack showed me around, his hand warm on my back, pointing at the chicken coop and the old well that still pumped sweet water. "This is home now," he said, and I nodded, though the word felt borrowed. That first family dinner sealed it. The table groaned under plates of roast chicken, mashed potatoes thick with gravy, and biscuits still warm from the oven. Jack's siblings filled the benches, his brother Ben cracking jokes about the cattle prices, and the 2 sisters, Ellie and Ruth. Ellie sat across from me, quiet as the shadow in the corner. She passed the salt without a word, her fingers brushing mine just enough to notice the calluses from reins and rope. Her hair was pulled back simple, dark strands escaping like they'd earned their freedom. She didn't laugh loud like the others. Her smiles came slow, watching the room with eyes that held the weight of the land. Jack cleared his throat midway through, standing to raise his glass. "Folks, I've got news." The clink of silverware stilled. "Elias here. She's agreed to marry me." Cheers erupted, back slapped, Ma's eyes misting over. Ellie lifted her glass too, her gaze meeting mine across the steam of the food. "Welcome to the family," she said, voice soft but sure, like the first rain after drought. Something shifted in my chest then, a quiet pull I couldn't name. Jack pulled me close, his arm solid around my shoulders, but my eyes drifted back to her, the way she wiped her hands on her jeans, deliberate, unflinching. The expectations hit like a summer squall. Ma started talking wedding dates around the quilt frame, neighbors dropping by with advice on dresses and vows. Church on Sundays meant sidelong looks, the pastor's sermons on family duty landing heavier now. Jack dove into it all, planning the ceremony in the barn, inviting half the county. He was kind, steady, the kind of man who fixed fences before dawn. But nights in the spare room, staring at the rafters, doubt crept in. This marriage was a bargain I'd made with myself, for safety, for a place to land. Yet Ellie's presence lingered, her quiet strength a thread pulling at the edges. Was it the way she mended tack without complaint, or how the horses calmed under her hand? I pushed it down, buried it under chores. Daily ranch work made avoidance impossible. Dawn broke with the rooster's call, and we'd all scatter. Jack to the fields, Ben to the herd. Ellie and I ended up in the barn often, hay dust thick in the air, the scent of leather and earth grounding us. She'd show me how to check the saddles, her hands guiding mine over the straps, close enough to feel the warmth off her skin. "Hold it firm, but not tight," she'd say, and I'd nod, my pulse thudding like a distant storm. Ruth watched from the doorway sometimes, her arms crossed, but said nothing yet. The proximity built slow, like heat off the stove. forcing me to see her, not as Jack's sister, but as the one who made the silence feel full. Shared chores pulled us into rhythm, the kind that settled deep in the muscles. Morning started with the barn, forking hay into stalls while the air still carried night's chill. Ellie moved like the land itself, steady, unyielding. One day, a fence post snapped under a cow's weight, splintering wood sharp as a warning. She didn't flinch, grabbed the hammer from the shed, nails between her teeth, and drove it back in place while the herd milled restless. Sweat traced lines down her neck, mixing with dust into streaks that caught the sun. I handed her the wire, our fingers brushing rough, and she nodded, eyes focused on the task. No complaints, no wasted motion. Her resilience wasn't loud. It was the quiet hold against wind that shaped canyons. My gaze started slipping then, catching on things I shouldn't notice. The way her forearms tensed when she lifted a feed sack, veins standing like ridges after rain. Or how she'd pause mid-chore, wiping her brow with the back of her hand, leaving a smudge she didn't bother to clean. Unspoken details piled up, the faint scar on her knuckle from some old barbed wire fight, the way her laugh came rare but full when a foal nuzzled her palm. I'd catch myself staring at the curve of her shoulder under faded flannel, the fabric clinging damp. Heat rose in my chest, sharp as stove coals, and I'd turn away quick, pretending to check the tack. But the pull lingered, a thread tightening with each shared glance. Jack's routine ran parallel, oblivious as the distant highway hum. He'd rise early for the far pastures, boots thudding down the stairs, coffee mug steaming in his grip. "Morning, love," he'd say, kissing my cheek quick before heading out, his world all cattle counts and market calls. Evenings, he'd slump at the table, talking yields and weather, his hand finding mine automatic. Solid, predictable. But the tension coiled elsewhere, in the silences he didn't hear. While he recounted a deal at the co-op, my mind drifted to Ellie across the yard, stacking firewood with swings that echoed like heartbeats. Jack never saw the stutter in my responses, the way my fork paused midair. His steadiness should have grounded me, but it only sharpened the ache, like fence wire humming under storm threat. Ruth noticed first, her eyes sharp as shears during meals. Supper that week was venison stew, thick and gamey, steam curling up to fog the windows. The family gathered, Ben spinning tales of town drunks, Jack laughing easy. I sat picking at my plate, gaze flicking to Ellie as she buttered bread, her knife scraping deliberate. Ruth's boot nudged mine under the table, not playful, insistent. Later, as plates cleared, she lingered by the sink, drying a dish with slow strokes. "You seem miles away," she said, voice low, not quite accusation. I shrugged, suds warm on my hands. "Just tired from the chores." But her look held, probing, like she saw the dust on my thoughts. In Willow Creek, distraction spread like dry grass fire. Whispers at the diner, nods at the post office. One slip and the whole ranch knew. The isolation amplified it all, the town's edges closing in like canyon walls. No city crowds to lose yourself in, just endless fields that mirrored the quiet inside. Nights, I'd walk the porch alone, stars pricking the black, the wind carrying coyote calls. My phone stayed silent. No old friends to call, no escape in neon lights. The ranch bound us tight, chores chaining days into weeks. Internal walls rose higher, fear of the unspoken twisting like bindweed. What if they saw? Jack's trust, the family's welcome, it all hung on my mask. Ellie's presence filled the voids, her quiet a balm and a burn. Then came the harvest fair, pulling everyone into the whirl. Banners flapped over the fairgrounds, scents of fried dough and popcorn thick in the air. Jack entered the cattle show, proud as a rooster, while Ma manned the quilt booth. Ellie and I ended up side by side at the apple bobbing, kids splashing laughter around us. Her sleeve brushed mine in the crowd, warm through cotton, and for a moment the noise faded. Ruth watched from the pie tent, arms crossed. The event wove us closer, threads tangling under the harvest lights. Wedding planning started simple, like mending a fence, one board at a time. Ma handed the reins to Ellie and me, saying it fit us both, the quiet ones. We'd sit at the kitchen table after supper, lamplight pooling yellow on ledger paper, pencils scratching lists. Flowers from the meadow, tables under the big oak. Ellie's handwriting was neat, slanted like a hillside trail, crossing out extras with a firm line. No need for fuss, she'd say, glancing up, her eyes steady as the horizon. I'd nod, but my focus snagged on the way her thumb rubbed the pencil eraser, worn smooth from use. The air between us thickened, heavy with unsaid plans. Not just for the day, but for the life it locked in. Those sessions stretched longer than needed. One evening, thunder grumbled distant, rain pattering the tin roof like hesitant fingers. We talked supplies first. Linen from town, lanterns for the dusk. Then it shifted, quiet as a stream turning. Growing up here, Ellie said, tapping the paper, you learn hardship early. Droughts that crack the earth, winters that bury the gates. Her voice carried the weight, not complaining, but stating fact, like describing the lay of land. I shared back, halting at first, city edges where jobs vanished overnight, nights alone with the hum of traffic that never soothed. It's all pressure, I said, just different shapes. She listened, head tilted, the scar on her knuckle catching light as she nodded. Shared words uncovered layers, like peeling sod from soil, revealing the roots beneath. Her stories of lost calves and blizzards mirrored my own buried aches, pulling us closer without touch. The attraction built through labor's echo, metaphors I couldn't shake. Mucking stalls side by side, pitchforks biting deep into straw. Her swing matched mine, rhythmic, unyielding. Sweat beaded on her collarbone, tracing paths like irrigation lines after thaw. I'd think of her strength as the ridge that holds against flood, steady while everything shifts. Or saddling horses for the far fence, her hands buckling straps with precision, fingers deft as weaving wire. My body responded in kind, muscles taut under shirt, a heat rising not from the sun, but from watching her move through the world unbroken. It wasn't fire. It was the slow burn of embers under ash, threatening to flare with one wrong breath. I caught myself lingering, gaze tracing the line of her jaw set against wind, and pulled away, heart thudding like hooves on hardpack. Ruth's eyes tracked it all, watchful as a hawk over pasture. She'd passed the barn door during our talks, arms folded, boot tapping gravel like a countdown. At breakfasts, her questions probed casual. Sleep well? But laced with edge, like a blade sheathed, but ready. Unease mounted, a knot in my gut twisting tighter. What did she see in my pauses? The way my laugh faltered when Ellie spoke. Willow Creek's gaze felt heavier now. Neighbors nodding at church with knowing tilts, whispers curling like smoke from chimneys. Ruth's silence wasn't empty. It pressed, forcing cracks in my resolve. One afternoon, as Ellie and I folded napkins for the reception, Ruth leaned in the doorway, wiping her hands on a rag. Careful with those folds, she said, voice even, but her stare pinned me. I felt exposed, like stepping into open range with no cover. Fleeting connections came in evening walks, the day's heat bleeding into dusk. After planning, Ellie and I would wander the back acres, dogs trailing lazy. The path wound past the creek, water murmuring over stones, fireflies starting their glow. She'd point out tracks, deer, coyote, her voice low, sharing the land's secrets. Once, under cottonwoods, branches sighing in breeze, she stopped, turning to me. You fit here, she said, simple, her shoulder brushing mine as we resumed. The contact lingered, warm through denim, a spark in the cooling air. Another night, stars thick overhead, we sat on a log, silence comfortable, until she asked about my city scars. My hand found hers accidental, callus to callus, and held a beat too long before I let go. Those moments wove us tighter, threads of possibility in the dark. But the ranch turned restless that week. A storm brewing that just in sky. Calves went missing from the north pasture, fences sagging under wind's push. Jack called a meeting at dawn, maps spread on the hood of the truck. "We ride out together," he said, and the crisis pulled us all in, demanding hands and trust before the night claimed more. The storm hit like a grudge long held, winds howling off the plains to lash the ranch by midday. Clouds boiled black over the ridges, spitting first rain, then hail that pelted the roof like buckshot. Jack's plans scattered quick. We saddled horses in the downpour, slickers snapping as thunder cracked. "North fence first," he yelled over the roar, mounting up. Ellie was already in the saddle, her hat low, ropes coiled at her side. Ruth flanked her, face set grim, while Ben and I brought up the rear, the ground turning to mud under hooves. We rode into the teeth of it, visibility dropping to arm's length. Lightning forked the sky, illuminating snapped posts, and wire tangled like veins burst open. A section of corral lay flattened, calves lowing frantic in the deluge, separated from the herd. Jack dismounted first, cursing as he wrestled a post back upright, mud sucking at his boots. "Tie it off," he called, and we moved as one, Ellie and I grabbing the wire, pulling taut against the gusts. Her hands gripped mine on the line, cold and slick, but steady, our breaths mingling in sharp bursts. Rain streamed down her face, plastering hair to her neck, but she didn't wipe it, just leaned in, muscles straining like the land under flood. Hours blurred into ache. We worked the breach, hammering new supports while the storm battered on, water pooling ankle-deep in low spots. Exhaustion settled heavy, a weight in the limbs that made every swing of the mallet count. Ellie paused once, leaning on a post, chest heaving. "This land fights back," she said, voice raw over the wind. I nodded, handing her a canteen, our fingers lingering wet and chilled. In that moment, vulnerability cracked open, her eyes meeting mine, unguarded, the rain washing away the day's armor. She looked smaller then, not the unyielding force, but human, shoulders bowed under the pour. My own fatigue mirrored it, the city-soft parts of me screaming, but her nearness held me, a quiet anchor in the chaos. Ruth's intervention came sharp as the next thunderclap. We'd secured the last calf, herding it back through the muck, when she reined up beside me, horse snorting steam. "You're not watching the wire," she said, low enough Jack wouldn't hear over the rain. Her eyes bored in, water dripping from her brim. "Or the storm. You're watching her." I froze, post half-driven, the hammer slipping in my grip. The accusation hung, heavier than the sodden air. Ellie glanced back, oblivious, tying off a lead. Ruth's stare didn't waver, protective, edged with something fiercer, like guarding a fault line about to shift. "This ain't the time for distractions," she added, spurring away, but the words lodged deep, a barb under skin. The forbidden pull heightened in the wet dark, awareness sharpening like a blade on whetstone. As night fell, we retreated to the barn for repairs, lanterns flickering yellow against beams slick with damp. Ellie and I, side by side again, splicing wire by feel, the scent of wet earth and horse rising thick. Her shoulder brushed mine in the narrow space, a jolt through soaked flannel, and I felt it all, the want coiling tight, forbidden as trespass on sacred ground. Jack worked distant, calling orders, his voice muffled by fatigue. But here, in the storm's aftermath, the air between Ellie and me hummed, charged with what couldn't be voiced. Her hand steadied mine on the pliers, a beat too long, and I pulled back, heart thudding against ribs like rain on tin. By midnight, the worst passed, wind dying to whispers. We trudged to the house, bodies heavy, but the crisis bound us closer, threads of trust woven in mud and strain. Jack clapped my back, grateful, collapsing into bed. Ruth's glance followed me up the stairs, unspoken. Alone in the spare room, the rain's patter turned to private reflections, the night's pull replaying in the quiet. Ellie's resilience, her touch, the truth Ruth forced near. Sleep came fitful, dreams tangled with wire and water, leading to thoughts I couldn't outrun. Doubt settled in like frost on the window panes, slow and creeping after that storm night. Mornings found me at the mirror, brushing hair back tight, questioning the reflection staring back. Jack's ring weighed heavier on my finger now, a circle of gold that promised the life I'd chosen. Steady days on the ranch, his hand in mine at church, the town's nod of approval. But did I want it? Truly? He'd wake beside me some days, his breath even, arm draped casual, and I'd lie there, ceiling beams blurring. He was good, solid as the oak posts holding the corral. No fire, but no storms either. Yet the question gnawed. Was this commitment a shelter or a cage? I'd trace the ring's edge, feeling its cool bite, wondering if safety was worth the hollow echo inside. Memories surfaced unbidden, rising like groundwater after thaw. Back in the city, there'd been Lena, her laugh sharp as city horns, hands that pulled me into shadowed alleys for stolen kisses. We'd met at a bar, her eyes locking mine across smoke, and for a year it burned bright. Nights tangled in sheets that smelled of rain and her skin, whispers of forever against my neck. But she left for a job across the state, or so she said, vanishing with a note that tasted like goodbye. The ache lingered, a bruise under ribs, teaching me love's edge could cut deep. Then came Sarah, quieter, her touch tentative like first snow. We shared coffee shops and secrets, her fingers lacing mine under tables. But fear won. She pulled away, whispering about family expectations, leaving me to pack alone. Those ghosts haunted now, replaying in the ranch's quiet. Ellie's form echoing Lena's confidence, her steady gaze pulling like Sarah's hand. Had I run here to escape, only to find the same pull waiting? Willow Creek's gossip wove through it all, a net tightening with every sidelong glance. The feed store hummed with talk, Mrs. Harlan's son enlisting, the sheriff's new truck, and eyes turned my way, measuring the city girl turned bride. One slip, one lingering look at Ellie during market day, and it spread. Over fences, in diner booths, curling back to the ranch like smoke signals. Ruth's warning after the storm echoed, her words a spark on dry tinder. I imagined the whispers. That Elias, eyes wandering where they shouldn't. Church felt like a sieve, the congregation's murmurs filtering through hymns, the pastor's gaze lingering on the engaged couples. Secrecy became a weight, heavier than feed sacks, fears blooming that one thread pulled could unravel the wedding, the welcome, the fragile place I'd carved. Nights, I'd pace the porch, wind carrying distant voices, wondering if the town's eyes already knew. I tried distancing through work, burying the turmoil in motion. Dawn chores doubled, scrubbing troughs till my hands pruned, hauling water from the well in buckets that sloshed cold against thighs. I'd volunteer for the far pastures, riding alone till the house shrank to a speck, the rhythm of hooves drowning thoughts. But Ellie found me there once, reining up with a spare halter, her horse nickering soft. "Need a hand?" she'd ask, dismounting easy. And I'd nod, too tired to refuse. The labor pulled us close again, her presence a magnet under skin. Attempts faltered. The more I pushed, the deeper she rooted, her quiet offers chipping at my walls. Her empathy deepened it, subtle as dawn light on frost. One afternoon, mending a gate in the side yard, my hammer slipped, splitting a thumb raw. Blood welled quick, and I cursed under breath, wrapping it tight in my bandana. Ellie appeared from the barn, carrying salve from the tack room, her steps unhurried. "Let me see," she said, voice low, taking my hand gentle. Her fingers cool on the heat, dabbing ointment that stung then soothed. Eyes focused, not pitying, but knowing. "Happens to us all," she murmured, binding it neat. No questions, just that unflinching care, like tending a foal's leg. It cracked something open, her touch lingering in memory, bond tightening like wire under strain. I pulled away eventual, mumbling thanks, but the warmth stayed, pulling me toward truths I feared. Ruth cornered me alone that evening, her shadow falling long across the kitchen floor as the sun dipped behind the ridge. Ruth's words hung in the dimming light, but she held back that night, her gaze just a warning flicker before she turned to the stove. The encounter lodged like a thorn, pulling at me through the hours. Sleep evaded after, nights stretching long under the quilt's weight. I'd lie awake, ceiling shadows shifting with the wind's sigh through cracks, the ranch's quiet amplifying every creak. Isolation pressed in, the walls too close, the fields beyond a vast, indifferent sprawl. Willow Creek offered no escape, no late-night drives to anonymous bars, just the endless horizon mocking my trapped thoughts. The unspoken pull toward Ellie twisted deeper, a knot that stole breath, leaving me hollow by dawn. I sought solace in hidden networks, threads woven quiet through the rural weave. There was the old widow down by the creek, her cabin tucked in willows, who ran a book circle that doubled as safe harbor. Folks drove in from neighboring counties, cars bumping gravel roads under moonless skies. We'd gather around her pot-belly stove, herbal tea steaming, sharing dog-eared novels with women like us. Stories of quiet loves in backcountry towns. No names, just nods and knowing looks. The fire's crackle, masking whispers. One evening, rain drumming the tin, I drove there alone, mud flinging from tires. The group felt like a brief exhale, voices low over pages of forbidden glances and stolen touches. But it was fleeting, the drive home winding back to the ranch's watchful eyes, the relief fading like mist at noon. Phone calls bridged the gaps to distant queer friends, voices crackling over spotty signal. I'd slip out to the barn after chores, phone pressed to ear, leaning against a post that smelled of hay and oil. There was Mia from the city days, her laugh still sharp as she asked about the ring, the ranch. "You sound buried," she'd say, and I'd admit the weight, the gaze I couldn't shake, Ruth's probing stare. "Small towns eat secrets," she warned, her words a lifeline across miles. Another call to Jordan, up north in the hills, who spoke of her own hidden years, herding sheep alone. "Breathe through it," she'd murmur, sharing tips on grounding, focusing on the earth's pulse underfoot. Those talks anchored me, voices pulling me from the edge, but the signal dropped often, leaving silence heavier than before. The ranch's isolation sharpened the ache. No quick hugs or bar stools to lean on, just the phone's glow in the dark. Physical symptoms bloomed from the suppression, body betraying the buried storm. My stomach knotted tight during meals, food turning to ash in my mouth, forcing bites down with water that tasted metallic. Headaches throbbed like distant thunder, temples pulsing with each suppressed thought of Ellie's hands on reins. Sleep's absence carved shadows under my eyes, skin taut and pale as stretched leather. Hands shook mending wire, grip slipping on pliers, and once, riding the fence line, dizziness hit sharp, the world tilting like a loose saddle. I pushed through, blaming chores or weather, but the body knew, emotions dammed up, flooding inward, wearing channels deep. Ellie offered grounding without knowing, her presence a steady ridge amid the churn. Mornings in the kitchen, she'd pour coffee black, sliding a mug my way with a quiet, "Here," her fingers brushing the handle. No questions, just that unflinching steadiness, like the oak holding soil against erosion. One afternoon, calves bawling in the pen, she knelt beside me to sort feed, her shoulder solid against mine in the narrow space. The contact eased the knot a fraction, her calm seeping through like sun after frost. She'd share a story then, about a lost foal she'd tracked through snow, voice low, pulling me from the whirl. Unknowing, she became the counterweight, her quiet empathy a balm on raw edges, deepening the bond even as it tore. But the strain built to breaking, Ruth's accumulated watches forcing the truth toward light. That next evening, as dusk bled red over the fields, she cornered me in the barn, door creaking shut behind her. Ruth's boots scraped the hay-strewn floor, the sound pulling me from the bridle I was oiling. Dusk filtered through the slats, casting bars of red light across her face, sharpening the lines around her mouth. She'd been gathering pieces for weeks now. My glances at Ellie during supper, the way I'd lingered too long by the corral when she worked the horses. It started small, A nod from the porch as I watched Ellie mend a saddle, her hands steady on the needle. Then bolder, me pausing mid-chore to trace the line of her back as she forked hay, dust motes swirling like secrets. Ruth caught each one, her eyes filing them away, building a case quiet as stacking stones for a dam. That evidence piled up in the days after, her watches turning sharper. Mornings at the breakfast table, she'd slide the milk my way, her gaze flicking to where mine had strayed to Ellie buttering toast, the knife glinting slow. Afternoons in the yard, she'd call out from the garden, "Elias, you coming?" Just as I turned from watching Ellie ride the fence line, her form cutting the horizon clean. No accusations yet, but the weight grew, her silence a rope coiling tight. I felt it in the barn, the house, the open fields, her presence a shadow that followed, cataloging every slip. Family dinner laid it bare that Sunday, the table heavy with pot roast and carrots pulled fresh from the earth. Jack carved the meat, his knife steady, talking about the co-op run while Ben piled seconds on his plate. Ellie sat quiet, passing the gravy boat, her fingers brushing the edge of the dish. My eyes met hers across the steam, holding a beat too long on the faint freckles dusting her nose from the sun. Ruth's fork paused midair, clinking sharp against porcelain. "Elias," she said, voice even as the plains. "You gonna eat or just stare at the wall?" The room chuckled light, but her eyes pinned me, the crack in my facade widening like dry earth splitting. Jack glanced over, brow furrowing slight, but shrugged it off, slicing another piece. I forced a laugh, stabbing at my plate, but the meat stuck in my throat, the family's easy rhythm jarring against the pulse in my ears. Defensiveness rose quick after, a wall I threw up clumsy. Next morning, as Ruth and I washed dishes, suds bubbling warm, she leaned close. "You been off since the storm?" I scrubbed harder, the sponge rasping against a plate. "Just settling in. Ranch work's different." Her rag stilled, water dripping steady. "Settling don't look like that." I met her stare then, water cold on my wrists. "Like what?" The edge in my voice sharpened it, raising the air between us taut. She didn't push, just dried the last fork slow, but suspicion bloomed in her pause, a seed taking root. Evenings, her questions turned pointed. "You and Ellie get along fine?" And my answers clipped short. "Sure, like family." Each dodge fed the doubt, her nods turning knowing, the ranch's confines echoing back my own strain. Ellie stayed unaware, her quiet pulling guilt like a burr under saddle. She'd catch me in the tack room, handing over a curry comb with a simple, "Thanks for the help yesterday." Her smile easy, eyes clear as creek water. No hint she saw the heat in my gaze, the way it traced her throat when she swallowed. That innocence twisted deeper, shame coiling in my gut, dragging her into my mess without a word, her trust a weight I couldn't shake. One afternoon, saddling side by side, she brushed dirt from my sleeve, touch, light. "You seem tired." Guilt flooded hot, her concern a mirror to my hidden want, leaving me mumbling excuses, pulling away quick. Church that week amplified it all. The white steeple rising stark against the sky. The pews creaked under the congregation, hymns rising thick with voices trained on duty and sin. Pastor Hale preached on temptation's snare, his words landing heavy on the engaged row. Jack's hand warm on mine, Ellie 2 benches up, head bowed still. Whispers rippled after, old ladies nodding at my ring, eyes sliding to Ellie as she passed the collection plate. The moral press bore down, the building's walls closing like canyon sides, judgment humming in the stained glass glow. I gripped the hymnal tight, knuckles white, the service a forge heating my secrets to breaking. Ruth's private accusation came that night, her knock sharp on my door, demanding the response I'd dodged too long. The knock echoed through the thin door, pulling me from the edge of sleep. I sat up, quilt pooling at my waist, the room dim with just moonlight slanting through the curtain. "Elias," Ruth's voice came low, insistent, like gravel under tires. "We need to talk, now." No room for delay in her tone. I pulled on boots, heart thudding steady, and followed her down the stairs, the house creaking soft around us. Jack's snores rumbled from his room, oblivious. She led the way out the back, toward the barn, the night air cool and sharp with dew. Stars wheeled overhead, the ridge a dark silhouette. We slipped inside, the door latching with a quiet thud, horses shifting in their stalls, breath steaming faint. Lantern light flickered as she hung it on a beam, casting long shadows across the hay bales and tack hooks. The scent of straw and leather filled the space, grounding but close, like the walls held breath. Ruth turned, arms crossed over her chest, her flannel shirt rumpled from the day. "I've watched you," she started, voice even but edged, like wire pulled taut. "Since you came. The way your eyes follow Ellie, not like family, like something more." She stepped closer, boots scuffing the dirt floor. "Jack's my brother. This ranch is all we've got. You gonna tell me I'm wrong, or you gonna own it?" My back hit the stall gate, wood rough under my palms. Defenses rose quick, words I'd practiced in mirrors, excuses about tiredness, about adjusting to the land. "It's nothing," I said, but it came out thin, cracking like dry earth. Her gaze held mine, unflinching, the kind that stripped hides clean. No pity there, just the hard weight of someone who'd carried secrets herself. "Don't lie to me," she pressed, voice dropping lower. "I see it, in the barn, the walks, every damn meal. You look at her like she's the only water in a drought. Why? What's this about?" The air thickened, my throat closing around the truth I'd buried deep. Scrutiny bore down, her stance protective, shoulders squared like guarding the gate from wolves. But conflict flickered in her eyes too, a storm chasing clear sky. Family pulled one way, the unspoken other. I thought of the ring upstairs, Jack's easy trust, the town's eyes waiting to judge. But here, in the barn's hush, walls crumbled slow. "It's her," I whispered, the words tasting like blood from a bitten tongue. "Ellie. From that first dinner, her quiet, it pulls at me. The way she moves through this place, steady as the ridge. I can't stop seeing it. The strength in her hands, the way she looks at the world unflinching." Ruth's breath caught, but she didn't move, lantern light carving shadows under her jaw. I kept going, the admission flooding out raw, like a dam breaking after years. "Jack's good, safe, but this, it's deeper, like roots under frost. I felt it before, in the city, women who saw me real. But here, it's impossible. The wedding, the family, the whispers if it breaks. I look at her and want everything. To touch her without hiding, to hear her laugh just for me. But I can't. It'd tear us all down." Tears burned hot, spilling over, my voice breaking on the last. Emotional release hit then, chest heaving, the weight lifting sharp as a snapped rein. No more holding the lie. It poured out in sobs that echoed soft off the beams. She stood still a moment, face twisting, protection warring with the hurt of betrayal. "Damn it, Elias," she murmured, stepping forward, hand on my shoulder firm but not pushing away. "Ellie's my sister too. You think I don't see her strength? But Jack, this could shatter him. The ranch. Us." Conflict laced her words, voice thick. She pulled me into a rough hug then, her arms solid, smelling of earth and worry. "I won't tell, not yet. But you gotta face it. Can't build on sand." We stood like that, the horses nickering low, until my breaths evened. The fallout started immediate, as we stepped out, dawn just graying the sky. Ruth's alliance felt fragile, a truce in the tension, but the air shifted, family dynamics cracking like fence posts under strain. Jack stirred at breakfast, questions in his eyes, while Ellie's glance lingered unaware. The truth hung between us now, reshaping everything, pulling toward choices I couldn't dodge. Breakfast came heavy that morning, the kitchen thick with coffee steam and unspoken weight. Jack buttered his toast, glancing up with a frown. "You two look like you wrestled ghosts last night." Ruth poured his mug full, her nod steady. "Just barn talk," she said, eyes meeting mine, brief. A pact sealed in hay dust. I sat quiet, fork scraping plate, the ring cold against my skin. The decision loomed now, no longer buried. Call it off? Face the town's recoil, the ranch's fracture? Or bury deeper, let the lie root like bindweed? Each bite stuck, the future forking like a dry creek bed. Ruth became the quiet bridge, confidant in the shadows. Afternoons, she'd find me at the clothesline, pins snapping in the wind, and lean close. "Ellie's out riding the east line," she'd murmur, not accusing, but offering space. No judgment in her voice now, just the hard-won understanding of someone who'd mended her own fences. We'd talk low, her worries for Jack, the ranch's thin margins, my city's ghosts pulling back. "You can't fake roots," she said once, folding a shirt crisp. "They show in the storms." Her alliance steadied me, a hand on the saddle horn when the trail turned steep. She covered my slips, deflecting Ma's questions with chores, buying time. But trust built slow, her protection laced with the ache of divided loyalty. The truth reached Ellie in a vulnerable hush, 2 days later, under the big oak. Storm clouds gathered again, air heavy with coming rain, the leaves whispering warnings. I found her there, mending a halter, her fingers deft on the leather straps. Ruth had nudged me. "Tell her, clean break or no." My boots crunched gravel, heart thudding like distant thunder. "Ellie," I started, voice rough as the bark. She looked up, eyes clear, wiping hands on her jeans. The words tumbled then, raw as peeled sod. The pull from that first glance, the want, coiled deep like spring under frost. "It's you I see, not the life with Jack. You're quiet, your hands on the reins. I can't marry him knowing this." She stilled, halter forgotten in her lap, the wind tugging strands from her braid. No recoil, just a slow nod, her face unreadable at first, then softening like earth after thaw. "I felt it too," she whispered, voice low against the rustle. "The walks, the barn. Your eyes held mine longer than they should." Vulnerability cracked open then, her hand finding mine, callous, rough on rough. Rain started pattering, cool on our skin, but we sat, truths spilling like the downpour. Her own hidden aches, the town's weight pressing her silences. No promises, just the shared breath, a moment fragile as new grass. Healing came through rural threads, resources tucked quiet in the margins. Ruth drove me to the county clinic one gray morning, the truck bumping dirt roads to a counselor who knew the land's isolation. Sessions in a back room smelling of pine and old books, her voice steady as she mapped the strain. Suppressed wants like overgrazed pasture, needing rotation to regrow. "Authenticity starts small," she said, handing pamphlets on queer lines upstate, hotlines that cut through static. I called one night from the porch, voice cracking to a voice that echoed my own. Rural Sapphics sharing strategies, safe spots in neighboring towns. It eased the hollow, body unknotting slow, headaches fading like mist. Ellie's knowing glances grounded further, shared chores now laced with quiet support. No touch, but the brush of shoulders in the barn. The path forward twisted through small-town binds. Authenticity, a slow carve. I told Jack that evening, the kitchen empty save for the tick of the clock. His face crumpled, not rage but hurt deep as a lost season. "Why now?" he asked, voice thick. We agreed to pause the wedding, whispers starting at church but Ruth stemming the worst, calling it cold feet. The ranch shifted, awkward silences at meals, but no exile. Ellie and I navigated careful, walks turning to talks under stars, building something real amid the constraints. Hope flickered then, uncertain as dawn light on frost, but warm. A future not straight-fenced, but winding toward light. Under the ridge's shadow, I stood with Ellie, hands linked loose, the wind carrying wildflower scent. A resolve settling like good soil after rain. If you've hidden truth in small-town silences, share below. Subscribe for more stories of finding your way home.